This is Windshield Hoops. What's going on, everybody? This is Jay Wilder Adams today alongside Zach Dean. And 1 week until the NBA draft lottery from the moment we are recording this. And it's getting crazy. It's getting really crazy. We're starting to reach one of the bigger climaxes in the NBA we've seen in a long time in terms of unpredictability and just overall significance with, the potential landscape of the NBA for the team that does land Victor Wembanyama. Zach, how's it going?
It's going great. And to add on to that, I mean, Tuesday, a franchise is going to change forever, assuming Victor Wembanyama can live up to at least, 80% of the hype, which I think he'll do more of. But I mean, this is a great time of the year. We got the Western Conference and Eastern Conference finals starting up within a week. Those series are, finishing. And then the draft lottery should be really fun to watch. I'm excited.
I think I lied. It's actually in 4 days. You're right. It's on a Tuesday
Yeah.
this time, not Thursday. And it's
Mhm.
actually Friday. So I actually got that mixed up too. I'm getting a lot of things mixed up right now. The days are kind of like coming together. They all feel the same. So I guess my awareness of time is not there right now. But this episode is a little simpler than usual. We usually have like 5 or 6 topics that we worry about, but this one is only going to be 3. We are going to have, a second round reaction after the series are done, which will be in a few days, probably next week. And maybe
Mhm.
by then, like the Victor Wembanyama stuff we'll already know about. So we're going to leave that toward next week, but we'll talk a lot about the Suns a little bit this episode because they're the first team in the second round to get eliminated. But let's transition right away and just talk about the draft lottery. It might seem weird, and I had a total typo in the headline, so let me fix that real quick. All right, we're good now. So the draft lottery has been kind of boring the past couple of years. Usually a team in the top 3 has gotten the number 1 pick. Minnesota was the 3rd worst team in the NBA, got Anthony Edwards. Detroit had the 2nd worst record, landed Cade Cunningham. Orlando was bottom 3. They landed Paolo Banchero. So there hasn't been much movement, which makes this lottery to me extra interesting because the odds are flattened, and we haven't felt those results since the Zion draft. So you would say, based on the probabilities, like the law of averages are going to really shake things up very soon, and maybe it's going to happen as soon as this week. So Zach, I want to talk to you. What team among the teams in the lottery, needs the number 1 pick, aka needs Victor Wembanyama the most?
Well, there's a lot of teams that obviously need him, but I think you can make a case for a few teams, but the one team that I think has the largest case for needing Victor Wembanyama is the team that I don't think even has a number 2 option on their team right now, and that's the San Antonio Spurs. I don't think they have a franchise player right now. I don't know if I'm really confident that Keldon Johnson or Vassell could turn into your number 2 in the future. So I think that team needs talent the most, and they'll need it the most. I also think a team like, a team that could jump up from like 8 or 9 where they're supposed to be at, the Washington Wizards, a team that I'm not also confident they have a really, great franchise guy there, and maybe the Houston Rockets. But the team that I think needs to win it the most would be the San Antonio Spurs.
Yeah, it's hard to disagree with the Spurs. Like, it's funny because the way they constructed its roster, the team desperately needs a point guard and a center.
Mhm.
And we know who are the top 2 prospects in this draft. It's a center and it's a point guard. So I think this team is trying to position itself to land one of those 2 guys and have that player hopefully be their, franchise pillar for years to come. It's hard to disagree there. But, you mentioned Washington. I think that team is just trying to find buzz. And I'll give you a couple of teams. One, this doesn't necessarily answer the question because this isn't the team that needs Victor the most, but this one could really change the outlook of things. I think Portland would be a very
Yep.
interesting spot
Yep.
because I truly think Portland doesn't have the assets to build a championship team around Damian Lillard right now. They just don't, because if they invest all of their draft capital for a star, I don't think that roster is complete enough. And at the same time, like what they have already at the disposal is a mediocre at best core, unless Shaden Sharp becomes a superstar next year, which 95% chance that won't happen because he's going to be a 20-year-old. So Portland needs the number one pick because that is a top 6 asset in the NBA that either you can land a potential generational talent in Victor Wembanyama, and maybe that can create like a Oscar Robertson and young Luol Cinder type dynamic, aspirationally. I think that's what you would look for. Or it's an asset to land like a big time superstar. I'm not talking like the number one pick and stuff to land a superstar. I'm saying number one straight up for a superstar. And you still have the assets to build a roster around that. Like Portland needs the number one pick if they're ever going to win a championship with Damian Lillard. It's looking very slim right now. And the fact that they're relying on something they have a 10% chance on executing, and you go further into the other details. Like it's going to be really hard for Portland to build a title roster around Damian Lillard, but I think the only way it's possible is if they land Victor Wembanyama, number one overall. And another team I think will be really interesting is Charlotte, because LaMelo Ball, to me, is one of the best young talents in the NBA. Yep. But around him, it's just there's not a lot of chaos. There's a lot of chaos. There's a lot of culture concerns. I mean, half of the roster's been arrested already, for crying out loud. Yep. Half the roster. Miles Bridges, nobody knows what's going on with that guy, right?
Yeah, I'll see if he's back.
Yeah, rumors that he's coming back this summer. Obviously, the James Bouknight stuff, and there's been more stuff with Charlotte. They don't have their coach figured out. Their ownership's kind of a mess. Maybe Michael Jordan selling the team, right? This is a team that right now is back to being the butt joke of the NBA, right? And they just need buzz. Wherever Victor Wembanyama ends up, it's not a bad situation. Wherever Victor Wembanyama ends up, the best GM candidates and the best coaching candidates are probably going to end up wanting to interview with you. And there's been people who've said, if Victor Wembanyama lands on your franchise, automatically your franchise boosts by $500 million. And Charlotte is likely the least valuable franchise in terms of value. So Charlotte, I think from a business perspective, needs Victor Wembanyama there just to add some functionality, if that's a word, to them. And as well as like getting LaMelo Ball a true running mate. Like somebody, like I think LaMelo honestly is probably a number 2. If I had to guess, maybe a number 1, but probably a number 2. So getting him like a real alpha player that he can set up and also, overcome some of the defensive shortcomings because the guy's freaking 7'5", right? Yeah. I think that would be a big get. So I look at Charlotte as a team that really needs Victor from the business and X's and O's standpoint, but also I'm really intrigued by the idea of Portland.
Yeah, I'm hoping he doesn't go to Charlotte because I hate their history in recent years of not just the coaching. I think the coaching's been really bad, but they've had so many first-round draft picks since the LaMelo Ball was drafted, and they've failed to even like try to develop any of them almost. Like they decided to finally give Mark Williams a run halfway through last year, but I mean, they didn't really even try to play Bouknight. They haven't done much with Kai Jones yet. And there's some other guys too that they've drafted that they didn't really play a lot on the actual big team instead of the G League. So I think that was more of a question with their old coach before Clifford. But yeah, I kind of hope he doesn't go there because of those reasons. But yeah, I mean, this draft lottery is going to be so interesting. It's going to be one of the biggest days in the entire NBA,
in a long
year.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be crazy. And you're right. Like Charlotte's been so confused the past couple of years. Like the moment the team drafted LaMelo Ball, it threw all that money at Gordon Hayward. Yeah. And then, the Miles Bridges stuff and the Terry Rozier stuff, like they won 43 games in LaMelo's second year, which is pretty good. They were nearly 500 in LaMelo's first year. Like they haven't been a dumpster fire until this year, really. But it's been pretty directionless because it's like, who's LaMelo's running mate? Like you can't trust Miles Bridges. You just can't. He didn't play this year. So yeah, Charlotte really needs this guy from a business standpoint. And also just, I mean, the moment I'm not going to say I would hate Victor there because like I said, I think better coaches, better owners, better GMs will start talking to you if Victor ends up there. And LaMelo Ball is flipping awesome. So I think that would be a really fun pairing. If LaMelo Ball, like I think LaMelo Ball and Victor would probably be the most entertaining young pairing that you can think of?
I'd be watching probably every Hornets game, to be honest. I mean,
Oh,
like I don't think you couldn't tune into those games. That would be so. I mean, I'll be watching most of Victor's games probably this year, anyways. But pairing him with LaMelo Ball, like a real space creator and somebody who can score 25 a game in today's league, that would be nice. And I really hope Victor lands with a team that does have somebody like a LaMelo Ball or a Cade Cunningham, because I kind of want to see, you know, I don't want to see him as somebody who needs to be the outright number one option day one. I think he is
it's a lot of
capable of
pressure.
doing that. I think he's capable of doing it, but I think he'll be better off early on if he has a Cunningham, a Ball, or somebody of that caliber next to him.
Totally agree with you. And Tyrese Halliburton is another guy you got to
Yep.
talk about because Tyrese would be fun too.
Oh, it'd
There's
be
a
so
lot of
fun.
fun spots. Like I've talked about, like Toronto and Chicago also being pretty fun spots for him because I think the big market element, like with Toronto especially, you got the French speaking background too. So
Mhm.
it would be because Canada, French is their second language or first language in a lot of parts of the country. So I think that there's a lot of I don't think there's a one horrible spot for him. Like I think Houston was an awful spot, but now Ime Udoka's there, and I
Yep.
think he could be good for Victor. Like there's a lot of good spots. I am very excited for next Tuesday. I'm going to watch that just absolutely like shivering. Utah too. Utah would be a crazy spot for him next to Walker Kessler, next to Lauri Markkanen and Danny
Oof.
Ainge and all those assets. So I don't think there's a lot of horrible spots because a lot of these teams have positioned themselves for a guy like this to come on their franchise.
Yeah, and I don't think I mean, just Victor himself will make teams so much better and make them not a horrible destination to be anymore. But yeah, I'm so pumped for this. I'm so pumped.
Can't wait. And let's fantasize about this situation coming up. And we're going to do that by doing a updated lottery mock draft. And we're going to use a tankathon order. So Zach's going to share his screen momentarily. And we're just going to make like quick lottery orders. And then we're going to talk about the Suns a little bit. And then that'll be the show. It's going to be a shorter show than usual, but it's going to be pretty good. So, yeah, stay tuned for the rest of the episode. And here it is. So,
All right.
Zach, you do the honors.
All right, let's see if one of the teams we just talked about wins it here. It's kind of a cool simulation.
That's cool looking.
All right, we got the Jazz
Utah.
+8.
I talked about them last too.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, based off of the law of averages you were talking about before, that kind of came into effect right here. So do you want me to take first pick then?
Oh man, it's a really tough pick. So I mean,
I know.
we'll have to definitely negotiate on this one. Yeah, you can take the first pick.
All right. I gotta use my latest relied result. All right. So yeah, not a very tough pick. Right away off the bat. I mean, this is gonna be a really big team now when you have Markkanen, Wembanyama, and Kessler in the starting five. Pretty easy pick. And it's gonna be Victor Wembanyama to the Utah Jazz. They get their franchise guy. I think Lauri Markkanen could be a number 2 on a championship team. I don't at some point. I don't know, if they should really continue to pursue him as the number 1 guy. But if
I
you
don't
get
think they
somebody
are.
like yeah. If you can get somebody like Wembanyama next to him, you don't even have to worry about that.
And Utah would be a fun identity too, because Lauri Markkanen has proved that he is more of a 3. And some people question that when Cleveland signed him at first, but it's pretty clear with the way he moves and the way he operates on offense, he is a 3. So you can have literally a 7-foot Lauri Markkanen at the 3, a 7'5" Victor at the 4, and a
Oh,
7'1" Walker Kessler at the 5. Like the
disgusting.
size, the length, that's the team's identity. And they all move well. And then you just get some athleticism and spacing in the perimeter and just set up those 3 core young players. It gets really fun with Sexton and Oshai Baji off the bench. And yeah, that's
Clarkson.
Clarkson, if he's there long term. that'd be a great Victor spot. It would be a plus. Like I love Hardy as their coach. Like he's
Yeah.
excellent. So I that's a really good spot for him. And plus, Rudy Gobert started in Utah, and they're buddies. They're French buddies, right? Like
Hmm.
so. I think Rudy Gobert would convince him to go to Minnesota after when we get all of our picks back and we could trade them again. So it all works out.
All right, so now you're up at number 2, and this is a weird spot because it's the Hornets, and they already have LaMelo Ball, but projected second pick is Scoot Henderson. So do you go with Henderson here to pair him with Ball, or are you going to go with Brandon Miller as a better fit pick?
I I don't believe drafting for fit at the top. I think you get the best asset and figure it out. And then you
Mhm,
flip the asset if you need to. Take Scoot Henderson number 2 overall because I think Scoot is the clear number 2 guy in the draft. I believe in these drafts, like when there's top 2 guys for such a long time, like Victor's an exception to this because he's the best prospect ever, but we start to nitpick a little too much and overthink stuff. Like Scoot did have an injury plagued second G League season. He did have some inconsistent nights. There are questions about his engagement, which I think are complete nonsense because we've seen him when the lights are brightest against Victor Wembanyama in the G League exhibition. He shows up when it matters. And it's really hard to stay engaged when you're a lock being a top 3 pick all year and just you're in these quiet arenas with no fans all the time. Your team isn't very good. Like I don't excuse that much for Scoot. Like he's not a generational prospect like people have said. I just don't
mhm.
think the size and shooting is there necessarily. But he is powerful. He's explosive. He's got a feel. I mean, there's a lot of like John Wall and Derrick Rose in him, and he's a star. And pairing him next to LaMelo, they're kind of thunder lightning because LaMelo's kind of the crafty, skilled floor spacer, and you got like this absolute train in the backcourt, maybe a little smaller, but plays with power. I think that could be a really fun dynamic that could work. So
Gotcha. All right, now we had a few teams that jumped up here. The Wizards jumped up to pick 3, and this will be an interesting selection. I think it's going to be between Brandon Miller and Amen Thompson. And this is a team that I think needs a point guard so badly over the last few seasons. And I think with that bias that this team is going to need a point guard, I think on their big board, and I mean I see it on big boards a lot too. I think they're going to have Amen Thompson above Brandon Miller, and I think Amen Thompson's going to make more sense for this team, especially with the assumption of them keeping Kyle Kuzma, and Porzingis looks like he's getting a big extension. So I agree that you shouldn't be taking fit at the top, but I think the talent level between Thompson and Miller is so close to where I would take Amen here. I think the ceiling is a lot higher there. And with this Wizards team, I think you do need to pick for ceiling as well,
I
because I
agree.
don't think
You're right.
you have a number one option. And I think Amen Thompson at his peak could be somebody that could coordinate an offense. And I mean, imagine him playing next to Bradley Beal, somebody who can play off him and space the floor, and then you got other guys that can space the floor and help him out a lot in Porzingis, and Kuzma can do a little bit of that. So I'm going to take Amen Thompson here. I wouldn't completely disagree if you went Brandon Miller, but I do think Amen Thompson makes more sense for them.
I like that pick. I do lean Brandon Miller as a slightly better prospect, but
I do too right now.
I think Emmett Thompson is like he's the how do I put it? He is the Scotty Barnes prospect. He's the like he's the wild card. He's the Kristaps Porzingis prospect.
Yep.
Like Dragan Bender, even though he turned out to be a bust. Like he is the swing high ceiling kind of mystery guy because while he's got like some traits that look honestly, not to go too crazy, they look generational sometimes. The way he
Yeah.
glides, his playmaking, his just feel, his flair. He's got it all in those elements. But then you also question the handle a little bit, the floor spacing, the
Yep.
competition. He's a swing, but Washington, like you said, is missing a number 1, and he's a positional fit. And I see Miller more as a 3 or a 2, like in terms of option. And Ahmed Thompson does have that swing upside where it's like, would it be crazy if he ended up being the second best player in this draft? So I think it's a good pick.
All right, now you're up with the Spurs. They fall a little bit here. You got Brandon Miller on the board. Do you take him or do you go with, maybe somebody a little lower?
It's a hard pick.
Because I mean, I feel like you are a big Cam Whitmore guy, if I'm correct.
That's who I was thinking of.
Because I think with Whitmore, he does probably have a higher ceiling than Brandon Miller does. He's younger as well.
I'm
But
taking Cam Whitmore.
you are? All right.
I'll tell you
You might.
this. Outside of last year, the fourth pick is often a swing pick where you swing for upside. I don't think this would happen, but at the same time, I didn't think Jaden Ivey would fall to 5. I didn't think Chris Dunn would fall to 5 in 2016. So I just think San Antonio is another team that needs a star. And I think Cam Whitmore has a lot of Anthony Edwards in him in terms of just being a ultra mature, strong, explosive athlete with good feet at such a young age. He's only 18 years old, and he's got all the makings of a potential two-way, three-level scoring star. And that's what you want in the NBA. So I just think San Antonio is looking for a guy, not a great fit because they already got some wings down there. When you look at Devin Vassell and Keldon Johnson and Malachi Branham and guys like that, but
Mm-hmm.
I would bet on San Antonio, the upside of Cam Whitmore, because I trust that organization to develop it.
And we've seen, crazy things happen, like you just brought up as well. The Spurs they just did it again with Keldon Johnson and Vassell. They developed those guys well. So, the hope is they would do that again with Whitmore. And then this one's a pretty easy pick. I mean, Brandon Miller just fell into the laps here of the
This is a
Pistons.
great fit.
Yeah, this just makes sense overall. With Cade Cunningham returning next year as, the floor general on that team. You have Jaden Ivey as well. I think he's a really great positional fit. They still have some questions in what they're going to do in their front court overall, whether, they stick with a James Wiseman or a Jalen Duren, like who is going to be your center. I would probably hope that it's going to be Jalen Duren next year. But yeah, I think Brandon Miller makes a lot. If he goes to 5, I think that's a steal. First of all, he could go as high as 2 if some team is, completely, if the Hornets decided, yeah, we can't do 2 point guards, then maybe they could have went Miller there. But I would just trade down at that point to try to get value. But Brandon Miller, I think he's a solid defender. He's one of the best shooters in the class. Right away, he's going to be great off the catch. He showed a lot of improvement as a finisher and, a 2-point scorer that we really needed to see throughout the season. I think he'd be a steal at 5. And now we got the Rockets who fell.
This is the best fit out of any team at the top.
Mm-hmm.
Best fit. Utah, like Victor's a great fit. He's a great fit everywhere because it's Victor. It's a little funky in Charlotte, a little bit. The third pick, Ahmed Thompson, kind of a project on a team trying to win for some reason. Cam Whitmore, a team with a lot of wings. This just feels right?
Yep.
The Pistons wanted Sadiq Bey to become that sniper, secondary creator. He just isn't that. And I think Brandon Miller is basically like a Sadiq Bey on a ton of steroids.
Yeah.
So you just get this guy who can shoot the lick out of the ball. You get a guy who can create as a tertiary creator, I think, in that offense, who's got length, who's got physicality, who's got toughness, who could defend a little bit. He's just a great fit at the 3. You have Cade and then Ivy, and then you have Miller at the 3. You got Duren at the 5. Who knows what the heck they do at the 4, but Bogdanovich is a good short-term 4, so can't complain.
All right, now you're up with the Rockets, who unfortunately for them fell a little bit in the draft at pick 6 here.
Can you scroll
down? What are you going with? Yeah. So right there we got Thompson, Walker, Black, got Grady.
Okay. This is where we're going to get Okay, sorry, my computer froze. Okay. I am down to 3 players. This is where it gets interesting.
Yeah, this is like a crapshoot, honestly, at this point.
Yeah, we know who the top 5 guys are, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree.
But trying to think of Ime Udoka, I think there's a toughness that he likes. I think there's going to be a maturity that is going to be important. I am going to go Jarris Walker here, but I was really close to taking Taylor Hendricks.
I like that. That's who I would have gone with as well.
because I think that Rockets team is still looking for some toughness on that team, some switchability, some connective playmaking. I think Jarris Walker is an Ime Udoka type player, and he's one of those guys where I don't think he's NBA ready as a scorer. I think he has NBA ready intangibles on the defensive side as a connective playmaker, and you hope someday at a high peak he could become kind of like an Aaron Gordon type on your team, where he's just kind of there. He can kind of plug in and score wherever you need him to. His shooting off the catch has a long way to go, but I think he's a great cutter. He's super athletic. He's a good connective passer, and he's a tough son of a gun on defense. So, yeah, I'm going to go Walker here.
Now I got a really tough pick at 7 here with the Trailblazers. Kind of fighting between a few guys here. I'm assuming that they're going to keep Lillard, even if they get, kind of screwed with a lower draft pick here. So I kind of don't want to, because the next player up on my board, I'm kind of high on him. I like Anthony Black a lot, but I'm not going to take him here. I don't think that would make a ton of sense with Dame and Simons.
Yeah.
But I'm going to go with somebody that you almost just took. I'm going to go with one of the most versatile defenders in this class, an instant catch and shoot threat for this team, really athletic. I'm going to go Taylor Hendricks.
Good pick. I would have gone him too. I would have gone him if I had the 7th pick. So, good pick.
I think right away he's got a nice floor. I think he's going to be a nice defender at some point in his rookie year. I think he gives you catch and shoot shooting right away. Obviously at this spot, I would kind of like take upside as well. And I do think he has nice upside, but just with how that team is positioned and they kind of got screwed here with the 7th pick, you'd hope for them they'd be a little higher. But yeah, I mean, that's going to be a really weird spot for them if they actually do land, around 7 on draft night. I wonder if that will further, maybe bring up conversations of dealing Lillard.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. 7th pick would be bad for this team, but with the 7th pick, I think you made the right pick.
All right, now you got the Orlando Magic at 8, who just had Paul Banchero win Rookie of the Year.
I think Orlando needs floor spacing, athleticism, and low maintenance players because you have your 2 franchise players in Paolo and Franz. So I'm going to go – I don't know if this is a reach or not, but I'm going to go lean Grady Dick here.
That's who I was going to go with as well. I think that's a good pick.
I just think he's the best fit. I'm looking at the rest of these guys in the top 10, and they're either redundant or they just don't add floor spacing, and Orlando really needs floor spacing right now. And, I love Caleb Houston. I think he is going to be a long-term player. But also getting Grady Dick, I think you're starting to figure out, some glue guys around Paolo and Franz because you have Fultz, who I think is a good glue player. Wendell Carter's awesome. And then you got guys like, Jalen Suggs, who's your hard-nosed guard. That's why I didn't take Cason Wallace because he's sort of like Suggs in a way. And, yeah, I just think he's the best fit and adds the most spacing, and there's not really much of a gap at this range of the draft.
Yeah, I agree. That's probably who I would have gone. I think Grady Dick is going to either go to Orlando or OKC if he does fall. I think he'd be a great fit on either of those teams. Just someone who can, you can immediately plug in as a floor spacer. But this is also a really tough pick with the Pacers. A lot of the top guys left are guards.
I know who I'm taking. It's no brainer to me.
I feel like I know who you're taking.
I know who I'm taking.
I'm going to end up going with a guard here, which I don't know.
Easy pick for me. Easy pick.
I feel like you want to go with Leonard Miller right here.
Nope.
That's not who I'm going with though. I'm going to go with best player available, Anthony Black.
I would have gone with Sir Thompson.
Sir Thompson. I think
Thompson's very situational, but I think Indiana would be the place where he would best maximize his skill. And then you put a ton of speed around Halliburton with Mathurin and Thompson at the wing.
Yeah. I think for Anthony Black, I think I've heard conversations with him and the best passer and playmaker in the class. and he's really big as well at 6'7". I do wonder what they would do positionally. I wonder if Matherin is a long-term starter for them. I would assume he is, and I'd be questioning kind of where Anthony Black plugs into that lineup. But I think he's a phenomenal point of attack defender. He can guard multiple positions. I think you could evidently put him at small forward, especially if he adds weight over time. I think he could work as a small forward and be a lead guard for them at the same time. Right away, he'd obviously come off the bench though. But right now, I'm going to go best player available, and I have Anthony Black at 7 and Asar Thompson at 9. So there's a little separation for me there between those two guys.
I don't love Anthony Black next to Tyrese Halliburton personally. I don't think he would best maximize his playmaking next to him, especially because he's not a great shooter.
Yeah.
So I don't love the fit in Indiana, but if he's your best player available, he's your best player available.
All right, now you got the Mavericks at 10, who's stuck at 10. Can
you scroll down?
Yeah.
Okay. I think this is where I'm going to get interesting. I think I'll take Leonard Miller here.
All right.
I think Leonard Miller should go in the lottery. I think he's a top 10 pick. I hated
him at 26.
I hated his film last year. Hated it. I watched him like, this kid is not an NBA player. His feel was bad. He was erratic. He had no jumper. He didn't really know how to use his body. But this year he's gotten so much better, just so much better in terms of his feel. He's got a lot of wiggle to him at 6'10". He's strong. He's athletic, but he's got that shiftiness to him. I think his upside as a creator is good. I think at the rate he's growing and what you hear about his work ethic, I think he could be a star. And you also have him at the forward spot, and I think Dallas needs to find more long forwards. So I feel like he's the best. I think he's the best player available, but I also think he's the best fit in Dallas. So I'm not sure if they have the guts to take him at 10, but I would.
Yeah, I think, he had a 2020 game this year. He was averaging like 18 and 10 against grown men, in the G
Nobody
League.
talks about it either. Yeah. Nobody does.
Like, I have him number 12 on my board, I believe, which I think I'm a little bit higher on him than some people. I don't know where the consensus is at on him, but I have him as a pretty firm lottery guy right now, and I think he probably should be. I mean, he's a legit rebound and run type of guy too, and he's gonna, projectably, I think, average a double-double at some point in the NBA, maybe early on.
For sure.
But yeah,
I see a lot of Lamar Odom in him. I see Lamar Odom there.
All right, and then here, this is an interesting pick. I am going to finally, some people could have had him going a little earlier. I think you kind of cover this floor spacing a little bit there with Grady Dick. I'm going to take a little bit of an upside pick here. I'm going to go with Asar Thompson. I think, right away he can provide really nice defense, with switchability on that end, transition threat. He's already going to be, Amen's a better athlete, but Asar is still like a top tier athlete in the NBA right away.
Yep.
And I think if you can get somebody to play above the rim like that next to, Paulo, that'd be nice. And I do trust Asar's shooting more than Amen's. I think he's a little bit ahead of him there in that category. I believe he shot 36% from 3 in the overtime elite playoffs, which was definitely better than he did in the regular season. And he made some tweaks to his form. So I think he looks a little bit better there. But I think at 11, I think that just makes sense. I think he could have gone, several picks higher. So, taking a guy with that type of upside at 11 makes sense to me.
Yeah, or they address fit, so swinging on a second lottery pick makes a lot of sense. Good pick.
All right, now you got OKC at 12.
Do you scroll down? That's where it gets interesting. This is going to get interesting.
There's a lot of guys. I don't think there's many wrong picks here. There's a lot of guys you go with.
Okay, I'm going to go funky here. I think OKC needs more interior toughness.
Ooh, I know who you're going with here.
I'm going to go Derek Lively.
Yep.
I think he's the best defensive big in the draft behind Victor Wembanyama. I think he's switchable. I think he's got great feet. He's got length. He can protect the rim. He wasn't asked to do a lot on offense in college, and He was the number 1 ranked player out of high school, and he could space the floor. Like, I think there's a little bit of Marcus Camby in this dude, and Marcus
Mm-hmm.
Camby went on to win like DPOYs,
Mm-hmm.
and I think the idea of the switchability factor and just the versatility, you could put him next to Chet, and I think that could be very fun. I think the defense and rim protection would really complement that perimeter length.
Yeah. And I mean, that team just doesn't have much of an identity in the front court. I mean, obviously you have Chet, but he hasn't played yet. And I definitely don't think Jalen Williams, the second round pick one, is going to be a center for the future. I think he could be a rotational guy, maybe. But yeah, they definitely need a legit center. And I think Chet maybe works best as a power forward in the NBA, at least for now. So I think that makes sense.
Yep, for
But here we
sure.
go. I think this is a massive pick for the Raptors. I think I'm going Cason Wallace here. I think
Mm-hmm.
he's maybe arguably the most complete point guard in the class. He's I mean it's like the Milwaukee Bucks put Drew Holiday on Kentucky thinking we wouldn't notice. He has a very similar play style. He's pretty strong. He's phenomenal on the perimeter defensively. He's a catch and shoot threat. I think he's such a great hustle, and he plays with so much heart on the court. I think he's probably the hustle award. I think he would have probably won the hustle award out of this draft class. I think he just makes so much sense. I think he helps the half court creation with with Toronto, and I do believe in the theory that Kentucky guards are a lot better in the NBA than what they showed at Kentucky. We've seen it
Yep.
so many times, and I think he will be another product of that. And I think at 13, that could be an insane steal that we look back and say, how in the world did this guy not go higher?
I totally agree with you. I love Cason Wallace. I think he's a top 10 pick as well. Awesome defender. I think his offense, while it's not flashy, it's not creative. He has a toughness about him. He can hit shots from the outside, good feel. He's got a lot of the Anthony Melton, Marcus Smart, even Drew Holiday parts to him.
Mm-hmm.
I think he would fit like a Toronto Raptor point guard after Fred VanVleet.
Yep.
New Orleans. Okay.
Last pick of the lottery here.
I think New Orleans could use shooting a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I think they got moved. I'm down to 2 guys here. 2 guys. And it's going to be hard. Can you scroll down again? I got to think about this. Yeah. So they got a lot of wings, right? They got obviously Ingram, Herb Jones, Trey Murphy. They could use more guard play, I think, because CJ's their point guard, and their backup point guard is Jose Alvarado. But, Josh Richardson, is he a long-term piece?
Probably not.
I
do like a lot of guards here.
I'm not a big Nick Smith Jr. guy. Huchefino is nice, but not enough offense. I am going to go your favorite player. I'm going to go Jordan Hawkins.
Ooh, nice.
I think he's the best movement shooter in the draft.
Yep.
And getting good movement shooting around Zion and Ingram, could that really hurt? So I think he's a really good fit here. And I can see him slipping or going in the back end of the lottery based on how he played in March Madness. I definitely was thinking about Sensabaugh from Ohio State, but then I considered just, the positional logjam in New Orleans. So that was the other guy I was thinking of. But, there's other options. Like, I could see G.G. Jackson going high in this draft because a lot of people are really high on his upside. And I'm hearing some people that I respect putting him as high as 5 on their board. Mm-hmm. Like, there's a lot of G.G. Jackson buzz, and I like him a lot more than I liked Zaire Williams. And I think he's a better talent than Zaire Williams was. Yet Zaire Williams still went 10th overall because of upside. And I think Jackson's a better talent. So I can see G.G. Jackson, coming out of nowhere in the lottery in this draft as well.
Yeah, I have G.G. Jackson 13th on my board right now. I've definitely raised myself on him. I think he probably would have been the favorite to be the number 1 pick in next year's class if he stayed at high school.
Yeah, if he continued what he did his junior year, for sure. Yeah.
So if we're talking about that and you consider that, it might even be foolish for me to have him at 13. And
that could be a good spot for him in OKC too. They love swings. Yeah. Pokashevsky and Ousmane Dieng, Ray Rupert, also another guy to think of.
I really hope they don't take Rand Rupert for OKC. I don't want them to take that swing. I have Rupert. Um, where is he? I don't have him in my top 18 right now. But yeah, I think Jordan Hawkins would be really nice. I think the Pelicans need to add that type of spacing. He's definitely the best movement shooter in the class. Just won the national championship. I think he's a really nice player. I think he can be a solid defender at the NBA level as well.
Makes a
Kind of
lot of
one to
sense in OKC as well.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, even in Orlando, if
Orlando, they could have loaded up on shooting.
yeah, like Orlando could have taken him at 11 as well. But yeah, he's definitely the best movement shooter in the class. I think he helps the floor spacing a lot, and I don't think he'll be, as bad defensively as somebody like I think Grady Dick will be defensively. I think he'll be a little better there, even though I think Grady Dick's a better prospect. Just because I think Hawkins is a little bit more one dimensional offensively, where he's just gonna be kind of using that Kevin Huerter role with
Good comp.
just
That's a good Hawkins comp.
just a bunch of on ball DHOs where he's moving up and going up for high elevated threes because that dude jumps so high in his shot. I don't know how he's not getting tired out there taking 7 shots a game, jumping like that. But yeah, I mean, as you can see here, this is the mock draft. Are you liking this one? I kind of like this draft.
Okay, let's scroll up. So in this draft, we definitely went. I wouldn't say we went a little funky. I don't know.
Yeah,
Every draft's funky, so just expect.
I mean, this
Top
this
5.
lottery. The
I mean,
lottery was really funky.
Brandon Miller slipping to 5 is interesting, but I think it can happen. Scoot going 2, weird fit, but second best prospect. Ahmed Thompson 3 is interesting. Cam Whitmore 4 is interesting. Jarris Walker is a great fit. Then you go Taylor. Look, we got some really good fits here from the 5 to 7 range. We got Grady Dick makes sense there. I think Anthony Black next to Tyrese is a little funky, but that's just me. Leonard Miller would be a reach to a lot of people, but I don't think it is. Sir Thompson, the swing. Derek Lively, a swing, but a great fit in the interior. Casey Wallace feels like a Raptor. He just does. And Jordan Hawkins is like a great fit. But then we left out a lot of people because it is a deep draft and it's going to be funky. I just guarantee it because every draft is.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can really change up a lot of the guys in the back end of the lottery. Like, G.G. Jackson could go there, Keontae George. I like Kobe Buffkin a lot. I think he could be a really late end lottery pick if some teams really likes him. And also like City Sissoko from the G League Ignite. I think he could be a sneaky player. And then Nick Smith Jr., if a team really likes him, despite his rough year at Arkansas, he could go lottery as well. I mean, this is like
he could also go second round, by the way.
Yeah, he could probably. I think
Jaden Hardy fell second round. Jaden Hardy had a better year than Nick Smith did.
Yeah, so. I think that's a pretty good comp. But yeah, there's so many potential guys that go in the lottery this year, more than some recent years that I can remember.
Deep class. I think it's the deepest class I've personally seen. Following the draft since 2015. So, yeah, that's the mock draft. And to close out the show, guys, we're going to get off of that, and then we're going to talk about the Phoenix Suns because bad luck losing by 30 on national television with the season on the line for the second straight year. And, we could talk about it. I think this does put a question about Monty Williams. This is not the first time this has happened. I think it generates a lot of questions about Chris Paul, DeAndre Ayton. I've never liked DeAndre Ayton. I've made that very clear for years. Chris Paul, same thing to a lesser degree, but he's getting older. He's regressing, which I'm not going to hate on. He's 38, so that's not to hate on. Phoenix is at a weird spot, and I think that the Kevin Durant trade made it a weirder spot because this team lacked depth as it was, and now they leaned in so much to Kevin Durant. So, Zach, how bad is this Kevin Durant trade looking?
Right now, it's not looking good. And it's not really, I don't think Kevin Durant was the best in the postseason. I think he was kind of taking the back seat a lot to Devin Booker, which I guess makes sense. I mean, for one, Devin Booker was like the best player in the postseason for, the last few weeks. But Kevin Durant, was deferring to him a lot, and that's not something we're used to, him doing, even when he played next to Curry. So I think over time those two will build more chemistry together. I'm not necessarily worried about those two guys, but I'm worried about the rest of that roster. And I just, Chris Paul, I don't trust him anymore. I don't trust Ayton. I know you've never trusted Ayton. I mean,
Never. I've never trusted it,
yeah,
and I'm proud of it.
like
Sorry, I
I
take
think
a lot of crap for that take 2 years ago.
I think there's a similar comp here between, and you also don't like this guy as well, DeAndre Ayton and DeAndre Russell getting benched in playoff games by inferior backup players like Jacques Landale and Jordan McLaughlin. Like that happened in the playoffs this year. Ayton he had really, really bad games, and he's definitely not looking like a guy who's worth the contract that he got paid. I think the team should, they don't have to move on for him, but you have to look into possibilities. I think you're going to have to probably figure out a new point guard on that team. I don't think it'd be the worst thing in the world if Chris Paul came back, but I just don't know if he's the guy. But one of the bigger things this team needs to do is they somehow need to figure out their depth, because they just don't really have a lot of it. And when they did, even when the depth guys were playing well, Monty Williams had a lot of questions. I mean, I'm looking through Suns Instagram right now. Like
All the
100%,
on his head off.
all of them want Monty gone.
Yeah.
They want Monty gone. They want Ayton gone. I haven't seen. I don't know if they want Chris Paul gone. I haven't really looked into that as much, but I know they want. I know they want those two guys and maybe the three guys gone for sure, which makes sense because I mean that's probably what they need to do, and we'll see if Matt Ishbia and that whole organization decides to take that massive step this offseason.
Yeah, I didn't disagree with one thing you said, and I made a post and I stand by it. I think that the Kevin Durant trade has the most disaster potential of any trade in the last year. And that includes the Donovan Mitchell trade. That definitely includes the Rudy Gobert trade. Because people want to call that the worst trade ever. And I'm not even going to argue that. It's whatever. But my point is situationally. Like, if you make a mistake, right, you want to be able to find avenues to overcome it. I'm trying to figure out the avenue for Phoenix to figure this out, right? They doubled down. They doubled down on Chris Paul, who's 38. They doubled down on DeAndre Ayton, who I'm going to tell you this. I said this for years. He's the Andrew Wiggins of centers. I said that a long time. There's a competitive, and I think Wiggins is a better talent than Ayton is. I think competitive fire and just a focus that's always been missing with the dude, and a lack of like accountability. It feels like with the way he argues on the bench, he doesn't like holding himself accountable. And I think that's why there's been stuff between he and Monty Williams. So the problem with Phoenix is when you look at that trade, not that Kevin Durant individually is bad. By the way, Kevin Durant has questions too. He played 8 regular season games with Phoenix. He doesn't put any pressure on the rim, and he's turning 35 next year. Those are big questions to go all in on, right? And if you're going to go all in on that, you want great structure around them. But like you said, the bench stinks. 89% of offensive production comes from the starters. Chris Paul's aging. DeAndre Ayton, I don't think is a positive asset anymore. So they doubled down on all of that. And now I'm wondering, okay, Devin Booker, top 7 player. Kevin Durant, still a top 10 guy. What else is around them? How are they getting out of this? That's what I question. And by making this trade in which you add a Cam Johnson starter, Mikal Bridges, I think all-star, 4 first-round picks, you double down on it. So I'm trying to find out, like, what's the ceiling of this core? I don't know if that core had a ceiling of championship upside before this, but now I worry that there's an even bigger lid on the ceiling because you have 2 great players and the rest of it is simply a mess. Chris Paul's not getting any younger, and dang it, he's not getting any better. DeAndre Ayton, I don't believe in the guy. And Phoenix, I don't think wants him, and I don't think he wants Phoenix. So I just worry, like, did that trade put a lid on this core? And if Kevin Durant regresses soon, what does that say to Devin Booker when they're mediocre at best again in those situations? I think there's a lot of disaster potential here. And unlike the Timberwolves, at least they have a cat trade asset to get out of the Rudy Gobert trade, technically. Phoenix doesn't have that.
Yeah, and I think there's legit questions that you kind of brought up with Durant's health over the last few years. Like, can you trust him to play 55 games in a regular season to develop that chemistry with guys and,
Yeah,
put yourself in a good spot in the playoffs? I don't know what the answer to that is. I think this could end up as a really big issue. This is going to be probably one of the maybe the biggest offseason in their franchise history, because if they can, move off some guys and maybe figure out a new coach, that makes more sense for them that the fan base, doesn't hate. I think they could maybe, find themselves in a spot to win a championship because they have those guys at the top. Durant and Booker are an elite 1-2 punch, whichever way you want to go with them as the one or two, but they need the guys behind them to step up. You can't have them. I think they accounted for like 60% of the team's points
yeah,
in the entire playoffs, which is
yeah. It was ridiculous. They were
that's
everything for the team.
ridiculous. Like that doesn't I mean, yeah, I mean Booker was absolutely insane and he was hitting shots that I couldn't believe he was hitting, but that's still like unbelievable that that was actually happening. But yeah, it's a weird situation. I can only imagine how good the Pacers are feeling about the Suns matching that Ayton offer. That the Pacers were gonna the Pacers were gonna have DeAndre Ayton, but the Suns matched that.
Yeah,
So the Pacers kind of lucked out there.
they made that trade to win a championship this year.
Mhm.
I think if the Suns won the title this year, I think it justified all the future questions with the team. But the problem is, it felt like this was like the peak version of this team this season. And we'll see what it looks like with a full off season together. We'll see. But Chris Paul's not getting any younger. Honestly, I don't think DeAndre Ayton's getting any better. And yeah, KD's not getting any younger, like I said. So it's a weird, it's not looking great.
Worst case scenario, like let's say the Suns are barely above 500, they're dealing with the injuries and they can't really make massive roster changes this next upcoming season. Is there a question about some massive move happening at the deadline for them next year or in the off season? Let's say if they become like a first or second round exit next year and they
Oh,
just
Devin
don't
Booker
figure out the
questions come
issues.
up. Yeah,
Yeah.
they become a thing again. And that's just the harsh reality of the NBA. You move fast, you swing, you miss, you move on. So yeah, I
Because they
can't
don't they don't have a lot of time. Durant's really old. He's 35 soon, so they don't have a lot of time to make this decision.
I can't wait to see what Phoenix does this summer.
Mhm.
I thought the Lakers were finished because of their asset situation, but I mean
Figured
the
out.
Suns will have to manage their assets like the Lakers did. Like what the Lakers did was mwah, like the way they built that
Perfect.
bench and they got the speed and they got guys like D'Lo who are weird players, but if you have structure around them, you can live with his lows, right? Like the Lakers constructed that roster so well. If Phoenix will have to do that to make Booker and KD work, and that's like nearly working miracles. So be very interesting to see how they address these questions this summer. And honestly, what is DeAndre Ayton's value? Not sure. So
I don't think he's
that'll
a ceiling
determine a lot.
raiser.
I don't either, but it takes. Is there one team that thinks he is? Because some team might look at his natural athleticism and say, "Man, we could put this together." Like
Portland.
I could see a team like Golden State saying, "We'll give you Jordan Poole and even Kevon Looney in the deal."
I think if they continue to be really desperate, I think Portland would be an option as
Portland,
well.
they're desperate. Period.
They're just desperate for anything. The fit around Dame right now.
Maybe like Houston if they don't like Şengün. That's not happening. That
Yeah.
no, that was a dumb idea. That was a dumb idea. In my mind, it makes sense because I'm lower on Şengün's archetype, but no way Houston does that. So
Yeah, they love their
we love
6'8"
Şengün.
center that
And he's a
is
fun
like the
player.
worst
So
rim
I'm not
protector
gonna
in
hate on
basketball, but he's fun to watch though.
totally. Yeah, Phoenix has got some questions. And as we said, we are going to talk more about the second round after these series conclude. Golden State, Lakers happening soon, Miami, New York happening soon. Stuff still going down. And playoffs will be interesting. The Victor aspect will be interesting. But that's going to do it for this episode of Windshield Hoops. About 55 minutes, so a pretty decent length. So, Zach, anything else you want to say before we conclude this?
Nothing comes to mind, I guess. I mean, just pumped up. This week's gonna be fun.
Absolutely. And we got a lot of basketball to watch. It's summertime now. You
Oh
know,
yeah,
Zach right here just signed up for classes in college, so he's officially a big boy. So congrats, big
gotta
boy,
flex it right there.
St. Cloud State. I just came back from Phoenix in a stupid long drive. So
Yeah, it must have been fun.
it wasn't bad. The first half of the drive, you are in like all these beautiful mountains and trees and all this stuff. And then once you hit Texas, it just gets really boring the rest of the way. So
Yeah,
yeah, it's a long drive, but it's like running. When you run when you run a marathon, usually the first half mile is the hardest, and the last half mile is the hardest, right? But in the middle, you just kind of like cruise. It was kind of like that. So first
gotcha.
100 miles stunk, last 100 miles stunk. Everything else in between was kind of numbing fast.
Yeah.
But that does it for this episode. Thank you guys so much for listening. We'll talk to you soon. And until next time, this is Windshield Hoops.